This is the 9th CBSE class. Good evening, all of you. I'll be teaching you a biology portion of science. Okay? You must have already started with physics and chemistry. Yes. Started already with physics and chemistry. Which class this is? 9th. Huh? Doesn't look like a 9th standard class. Looks like a, what did I say, 7th? Anyways, how you all have done in your last standard exams, 8th standard exams? How did you all do? Very good. Wow. Nice. What about you all? You're the only?
I did well.
You did well. What about the others? How many schools? Which schools here?
Ryan.
Ryan, huh? All Ryan. Jaipuria.
TPS.
TPS? Nehru. Podan Nehru.
Orchids.
Orchids. This one, no? Seawoods?
No.
Koperke. Arey Papri, you are coming from there? Koperke?
No, I stay here.
You stay here. DPS. Podan. So it's a mixed group, no? Podan and DPS and Ryan and Jaipuria. I think all the schools are here. One. We get a taste of everything. Did your school start anything?
In biology.
Nothing. Not started anything. So, do you love the subject? Huh? Good. If you love, then things are going to be easy. Otherwise, you will say, "Arey, kab khatam hoga lecture." So, what are we going to study in this year? First of all, look at the index. Let us find out what are the chapters that you are going to study. What are the chapters you are going to study? The chapters that we are going to look into would be the first chapter, cell. See the index? The first chapter is cell, the unit of life that we are going to study. Cell, the unit of life. What about the second chapter? Tissues. Will you see there? Tissues. Third chapter, diversity in living organisms. That's a quite a lengthy chapter. Diversity in living organisms. And the fourth would be why do we fall ill, I suppose, for 9. Why do we fall ill? Why do we fall ill? And the fifth would be natural resources. There's a book, you did not get the book. Thursday only book. You got no? The entire set of books you got? Yes or no? I'm a very good teacher. Don't be scared. You got the books. See that every day you bring the books. Every class, physics, chemistry, maths, biology, bring your books. Bring your books. Because every now and then I ask you to solve the questions from this book only. Now, we are going to start with the portion, but certain things I want to tell you. Number one is you should have a proper notebook. You should have a proper notebook. Separate books for physics, chemistry, biology, whatever subjects you are enrolled. Physics, chemistry, biology, math, separate notebooks. Quite often I'll be correcting your notebooks. At that time I should not see you searching, ma'am, I did it here, now I'm not getting it because half of it is chemistry and then few pages of physics and then few of maths. That should not happen. If that happens, I'll ask you to repeat your work as many number of times as the letters in your name. Whatever number of letters in your name, how many letters in your name?
6.
So 6 times you have to repeat that work. Separate notebooks for separate subjects. Okay, so it becomes easier for you during an exam. You easily can go through what questions you have solved, what answers you have written. Because actually for you all, finding out the proper answers from the CBSE, that NCERT book is difficult. You all are not able to understand how much to write, which points to write. No? So, The volume has quite a number of things written in points. It becomes easier for you to understand how much should be write, what points to write. But we will solve quite a number of them in the class also. So you should have your notebooks. Okay, so see that if you have not brought today, I may not give much of writing, but you should have it from the next class. What are we supposed to start? As I said, the first chapter would be cell. And if you say that your school has not started anything, but this is probably what they are going to start. This is the first chapter that we are going to start. Cell, the fundamental unit of life. The fundamental unit of life. Cell, the fundamental unit of life. Now, as we talk about cell, the fundamental unit of life, what do you know about cell? You studied cell quite long, no? 6
Cell
times.
is the building blocks of life. Every organism is made up of cells.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Nothing. You have come across no cells before? The word cell is very, it's a very common word.
Ma'am, there are two types of cells.
I'm asking you cell.
There are millions of cells in every organism. It's not billions and billions.
Millions of cells in every organism. Okay, partly. Not every organism has millions of cells.
Means all multicellular.
Okay. Even then. So some other thing. What else did you study? What else you have come across about cells?
Ma'am, the cells have different functions. Like there are some specialized and muscle and some like the digestive system.
Okay, cells have different functions. That is what you want to say. So when we talk about cells, there are so many aspects of cells that we are going to study now. First is when we talk about the concept of cells. The study of cells was first of all done by a very famous biologist known as Robert Hooke. Now, before him also, many biologists had studied various different type of structures. They wanted to give few concepts about cells, and then their concepts that they had given forward that was not very satisfactory. So the other biologists, but by the time Robert Hooke came into existence in the 16th century, Robert Hooke came into existence, and then Robert Hooke, and before Robert Hooke also, there were so many biologists who had prepared microscopes to study all these structures, to know what is there in the living, in the plants and the animals. Basically, experiments had started in plants first. So that is how the concept of study of cells and all these started. So if you just a little bit talk about that, how exactly the concept of cell study started. So Robert Hooke, when he started, he was very inquisitive about how does the plant grow and all these concepts. So he made his own magnifying aid. That was a very simple microscope that he made. And that microscope could give a magnification roughly around something around 1000 times. Okay. Now, 1000 times, when I say, that's not a big number. When I talk about magnifying anything 1000 times, actually in the concept of studying cells, it's not a big number. Because today we talk about various different type of microscopes which gives us magnification over 1,00,000 times. And then only we are able to see all the details of the cells. You can understand how small the cells are in our body. So that has to be magnified almost 1,00,000 times to understand what is inside. No? And so go back to this concept of Robert Hooke. So what did Robert Hooke do? Robert Hooke just picked up some few cells, some few tissues, some few parts of the plant. Which parts of the plant he picked up? He picked up almost the tissues of the plants near the bark. And what was that? That was known as the cork. That was the cork. That is generally known as the cork. So which part? I said just now the bark. Near the bark, that part of the plant that he selected. And he started observing them under the magnifying aid that he made. So where he was observing this, he was observing these type of structures in the microscopes that he had prepared. So in the microscopes that he prepared, and what could he see was, he was able to see certain structures, something like this. He was able to see certain structures, something this way. He was able to see certain structures, something this way compact, and then having a definite shape altogether, something this way. Now, he was, Robert Hooke, in his own mother tongue, if I say, he started naming these particular structures as cella. He named this as cella because he felt that these are something like the boxes. They have a specific compact arrangement, something like the boxes. So he said that these are something like boxes, which other biologists later compared them as some honeycomb structures. Okay. So something like that, he says that there are, when I examine such type of tissues from the plants, and I get to see that there are some honeycomb-like structures, some box-like structures, some compartment-like structures. And but then he said that there is something inside which he could not see distinctly because the microscope that he prepared was a simple one, was not a very sophisticated one at that time, could not give magnification too big. So that at that time it was named as cella, and then another biologist actually named it as cells. So can we say that Robert Hooke had actually given the concept of cells? Yes. So Robert Hooke was the first biologist who had actually studied the cork tissues of the plant, the bark tissues of the plant, and then he was the first one to describe such type of a structure, and then more or less confirm that yes, such type of structures are there, and each of them are a distinct unit. Each of them are a distinct unit. And then later, many other biologists kept on putting their own concepts, some of them criticizing, some of them rejecting, and ultimately the concept of cells came into existence. Okay, the concept of cells came into existence. Now, as we start discussing as per your portion, as we start discussing as per your chapter here we are going to come across that what are cells? How do we define them? Where do we find them? What are their features, etc., etc.? Then, if this is what cells are, then how do we define cells? Cells are the structural and functional unit of life. Cells are the structural and functional unit of life. We are going to understand why is it defined as such. Cells are the structural and the functional unit. Why is it termed as such, the structural and the functional unit? So we have to understand this only with some examples. I will put forward some very simple examples. To make you understand that when we talk about the cells are the structural and the functional, I'll ask you when to write. When I talk, please don't be busy writing. So when we are talking about cells are structural and functional unit of life, that's a standard definition always you should remember. Define cell. This is what you'll always write for 1 mark. Cells are structural and functional unit of life. But then you should also understand, you get a 2 mark or a 3 mark question. Why are cells known as structural and functional unit of life? Let us learn with some 1 or 2 examples. I talk about first one. Let us talk about a red blood cell. Did you come across this word?
Yes.
Red blood cell. Where are they found?
Found inside the body. They form the red colored blood.
Of the blood. They are responsible for the red color of the blood. So they are found in the blood. A type of a cell found in the blood. So now I would say that this RBC that I am talking about more or less looks like this with a depression in the center. And if I look into the cell from the sides, I will show you beautiful images next time, not today. Now I talk about RBCs. RBCs are not a cell like a normal cell. RBCs are considered to be a peculiar cell. But you know, sometimes even when you are peculiar, if you are really good at certain things, our peculiarity also people appreciate. No? So same like the RBC does not follow any rule of a normal cell. It does not have a nucleus. It does not have any other properties that a normal cell has. But it has got certain components inside which helps in the carrying of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So I try to look into this function, this particular example for the first, that when I talk about this RBC, I'm saying that this is a cell which has got some special properties. It has got a typical structure. But if I draw other normal cells, how should I draw? I will draw that this is a normal single cell, animal cell I'm drawing. I should draw a big nucleus in the center. The moment I draw other normal animal cells, I should always draw a big nucleus in the center. But am I drawing a big nucleus in the center here? No, there is no nucleus actually in the center here. Instead, they have, instead of the nucleus, this particular RBC, what does it possess? It possesses a particular pigment, and that particular pigment is known as hemoglobin. And this hemoglobin basically helps in transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide all throughout the body. Now try to understand, why did I write this? I wrote cells are the structural and functional unit. What is the meaning? The meaning is that this RBC has got a typical structure only to suit a particular function. Why does the RBC has got a detailed structure like this? Why does the RBC has a peculiar structure like this? Because the RBC has to perform certain specific function, that's why. Let us talk about another example. I talk about one more example like the muscle cells. Now, if I talk about the muscle cells, if I look into one example of a muscle cell, we will always find that the muscle cells are long, slender cells. It is a single cell, but it is so long. It is a single cell, but it is so long, such a long cell. I talk about the muscle cells that we have. Hands, and then face, and then the legs, and then the heart, and then the internal organs, the stomach, and the intestine, etc., all these. These muscle cells, they are very long cells. Unlike this type, this is a normal type or a common type of a cell which is more or less spherical, but all cells are not spherical. Some cells are like this when I talk about. Some cells are long, and these cells have the capacity of extending and coming short again, extending and coming short again. Again, they will lengthen and again they come short. What is this process called? Contraction and relaxation. Contraction and relaxation, and that is why we are able to move our body. That is why I am able to talk now. That is why I am able to write now. The entire process of movement of our body parts is just because of the contraction of the muscle cells. So if the muscle cell would have been this way, probably this function would not have been possible. The muscle cells are long, fiber-like, tube-like, and there are some proteins in between, and which allow them to become long at one time and come short, long at one time. So can we say that these muscle cells have a particular typical structure only to suit a particular function? Yes, they have a typical structure only to suit a particular function. So what is their major feature? Their major feature, we would write that they are contractile. You will learn all these concepts in the next chapter also today. They are contractile. What is the meaning of contractile? They can undergo the process of contraction. The third example, this perhaps you know already. I don't have to tell you much. Are you aware about these cells? Are you aware about these cells? Yes or no? Did you see these cells somewhere, or did you read about these cells in the previous standard? Their structure, their function. I'm just drawing a rough diagram. Do you know this cell?
Nerve cell.
Nerve cell. Nerve cell. Can you tell me what do they do?
They carry oxygen.
No.
No, they carry signals from the brain. to
They
other
carry
body.
information.
Yeah.
They carry information. Information meaning, is our nerve cells functional right now? Yes. Now that I'm asking you something, you are not telling me that no, my name is etc. No, I am asking you something. You are giving me a relevant answer because coordination is happening correctly. Otherwise, you would have said, no, my father told me this today morning. No, I got up. No, because we are not talking nonsense. Why? Because the coordination is happening correctly, and that is what our nerve cells do. Our nerve cells, we have got millions of nerve cells in our body, but they are so long. Why they are so long? Because they have to carry messages from one part of the body to the other, to the brain, and then go to other parts of the body. Constantly connect one part of the body to the other. No? So this is what, there are so many examples that we can discuss this way. These are some very common examples I wanted to put forward. So I talk about the nerve cell. So what is this nerve cell doing, or if I have to name them, what is the name of this cells? I would say this is a neuron. And what is this neuron doing? This neuron is actually bringing about the transfer of information, and we call them as conduction of impulses. We'll learn the definitions of all these words. Impulses, conduction of information from one part of the body to the other. Now, when we are looking into the definition, now let us write down. Cells are structural and functional unit. Why do we say so? Write down the name of the chapter first, take out your notes. You have to divide them. And I think that thin book, you can divide it only 2 parts. Don't divide it into 3 because there will be so much writing also that you have to do. Even in biology, it is so much. I think that book is enough for biology only.
Like, can I write it for last round? Then I write it. Go home and write it.
Today, what are the subjects you have today? Maths?
Maths and
Maths and biology. So you are writing maths here only?
Maths is the book, one book for science.
Achha, science already you wrote physics, chemistry here. So write today, Rag. Because for physics also, chemistry also, they'll be doing so many questions and written work will be there. So this notebook is sufficient for the entire year for one subject. Don't make it divided into 3 or 2 or 3.
Actually, I started writing all subjects in one month.
And that's why I told you already, because I'm saying this for the last few years. Don't make an encyclopedia. Right? If you have to divide it into 2-3 parts, then make a fat notebook. Because you will not have, simply why to carry that fat notebook? Because when you have biology, you will not have chemistry. When you have chemistry, you will not have physics, majorly. During the month of May, maybe, but not now. So make thin notebooks like this, one complete for basic, one complete. Or if it's too fat, you can divide it into 2 parts only. Otherwise, you'll have 3 notebooks separate for physics, 3 for biology, unnecessary. Because biology will have diagrams and so much to write. And I'll torture you all. Write and practice, write and practice. You get fed up of me by the end of the year. So now, I'm scaring you all. So now, the first thing that we write, define sets. Define sets. So you know what is the definition to write now? What is the definition we write? Cells are and functional unit of life. So that's the typical definition. Cells are the structural and functional unit of life. Yeah. Now, next question you write. Why are cells? Now, this is an explanatory question which you get quite often for 2 months, as I said. Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural functional unit? Write down. All cells of an organism. You are used to writing dictations, no? Okay. All cells of an organism. All cells of an organism. If there's any difficulty, nothing. If there's anything that you are not able to understand, ask. All cells of an organism possess a definite structure. Possess a definite structure, size, and shape. Definite structure, size, and shape. Full stop. Cells. Next slide. Cells of similar structural features, cells of similar structural feature group together to form a specific kind of a tissue. Full stop. The structure of a cell, next slide. The structure of a cell is designed so as to enable the cells perform a particular is designed so as to enable the cells perform a particular function. Full stop. Now we will write one or two examples. Next paragraph. For example, nerve cells are extremely long and branched. Why is it called branched? Because they have got these type of processes, no, by which they receive information, carry information. Nerve cells are branched.
Nerve cells are extremely
long and branched. Nerve cells are extremely long and branched. Nerve cells are extremely long and branched so that they can receive information and carry them to all parts of the body of an organism. To all parts of the body of an organism. Full stop. RBCs are biconcave. This is called biconcave shape. RBCs are biconcave, comma, do not possess nucleus. RBCs are biconcave, do not possess nucleus, but instead possesses hemoglobin. Check spelling. But instead possesses hemoglobin. HAEMOGLOBIN. Possesses hemoglobin, which helps them to carry out the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Helps them to carry out the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so did you understand this concept? The first concept that we studied. Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? So here later, by the end of the chapter, you will be able to understand so many other examples. You can write your own examples also, but this is what you have to write. That why should a particular type of a cell have a definite structure? Now that we talk about a multicellular organism, is it possible that we as a multicellular organism has got millions of cells and all of them are of the same structure? No, it is not possible. Otherwise, all the cells would have been performing only one function. Then how would the complexity be satisfied? How would the functions happen? So this is the first thing that we understand. Now, since we are talking about cells, here let us try to understand that how complex a cell can be. Now that we talk about a cell, the next concept that we are going to look into would be that what type of a cells are we, or what are the different types a cell can be? What can be the size variation of a cell? What can be the shape variations of a cell? Okay, a little bit about that. So when we are talking about, first of all, we look into that how can we majorly talk about the size and the shape variation. Let us just talk about some few cells, then we look into some other definitions. I may talk about the size. What can be the size of a cell? Certain cells would be having a size of just 0.1 microns or even lesser than that. 0.1 micrometer this is a unit. Micrometer much lesser than millimeter. Micrometer is a unit much lesser than millimeter, and this is basically a unit used to measure the microorganisms. You know what are microorganisms? Can you give me one or two examples?
Amoeba.
Okay.
Magnesium.
Okay, very
Hydra.
good. Hydra, okay, good. Disease causing microorganisms. Pathogens, there are many. So now when I talk about, yes, there can be certain organisms which are so small, and there are many other types which will again have various types. And then there can be some which can be quite bigger than them, 5 to 10 micrometer, quite bigger than them, no? And then again, there can be some where we can understand that there can be some cells which can be something about 500 meters also. 50 to 500 meters, okay? So now that we are talking about something around 50 meters, something around 500 meters, okay, let us talk about a small count here. There are certain cells which are quite big enough. Now tell me, what do you understand by this concept? The moment I'm talking about that the size variation is something like this, can we see them with our naked eyes? No, not possible at all. As the size variation, if it is just 50 to 60 to 100 also, will we be able to see with our naked eyes? Now yes. Now yes, 50 meter we can see, you know. So now that we are talking about 5 to 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters, yes, we will be able to see with our naked eyes because these are quite big structures. Quite big structures. Are there actually cells which are of this diameter or width or size? Yes, they are. Shape, what are the different shapes? Some shapes already we had discussed, and we are going to talk about shapes as we look into the concept of unicellular also. But let us just look into some shapes and try to understand some names also. Shapes, when I talk about, there can be certain type of cells. Now that I draw this particular amoeba, irregular shape. Then I talk about the paramecium. If I talk about the paramecium, okay, this has got a distinct shape, oblong type of a shape, elongated type of a shape. These are cells which are known as slender shapes. These are again the common spherical type of shapes. Then again, if I have to talk about certain cells known as the guard cells. Now these guard cells basically has got a structure something like this. These are the common bean-shaped cells. Bean-shaped cells. These are generally found in the leaves of the plants. Then again, we may talk about certain types of cells known as which we have and the developed organisms. I may talk about certain types of cells, something like this. These are the variety of shapes, cuboidal, cube-like, no, cuboidal. Then again, if I talk about another type of a shape, something like columnar, then columnar shape would be how much would be like tall pillar-like cells like this, and they may be in one or two tiers also. So shapes of the cells when we talk about, there are again so many variety of different types of shapes. Honeycomb, that is not one cell we are talking about. Honeycomb shapes, not exactly. When we talk about the shape of cells, we don't say honeycomb shapes as such. There is no cell which gives a honeycomb shape. But Robert Hooke had understood that there was something that he could see in his microscope giving that. And it's a cluster of cells giving that structure. But when I say columnar, a single cell is pillar-like. When I say cuboidal, a single cell is like a cube. I'm not talking about the entire cluster cuboidal, no? So honeycomb as such, we don't understand that there's any cell which is in the shape of a honeycomb. No, nothing. In plants also, in animals also, nothing. But yes, when they are arranged, cells may be hexagonal, single cells may be hexagonal, and when they are arranged, they look like a honeycomb. Like that. So these are some of the variety of shapes that we understand, okay, in the plants, in the animals. Now we are going to look into that. Say suppose, now I talk about that this is an organism. No? What is the meaning of the word organism? Do you understand, do you remember the relation between the word cell and organism? What is it?
Cells form tissues, tissues form organs, organs form organ systems, and organ systems form organs.
Very good. All of you know this, no? So when we are talking about cells and the relation of a cell to organism. So we are talking about cells now, we are talking about cells. So if I have to talk about the relation of cells and then try to go till organism, then what are the different levels? The different levels would be cells will club together, group together to form tissues. And the tissues would group together to form certain organs. And the organs would group together to form certain organ systems. And the systems would group together to form organism. Is this applicable for us?
Yes.
Very much. So if I talk about cells, we'll learn examples also. Cells and then tissues and then organ and then system and then organism. Let us learn one example since we are talking about this. That how can we relate to this type of association between the word cell and organism. Now, if I talk about the word cell, say suppose I talk about again the RBCs and the WBCs. No, these are certain cells. RBCs and WBCs and something other, all these other different type of cells. If I have to put together, they should be forming one type of a tissue then. Then which is this tissue that they would be forming? This is one of the simplest examples you can remember, blood. Certain tissues now forming organ. Let us try understanding. Okay, the blood is there. Now these tissues have formed, these cells have formed this tissue. But this tissue along with other different tissues, if I put together, then the organ that they should be associated would be the heart. The blood is there and various other vessels are there and various other muscles should be there. Then we talk about the heart here. Then various organs coming together to form the system. So, okay, now that we have got the heart, we have got again various different type of the blood vessels. We have got the other different type of fluid known as the lymph, and that should form a system. And what is this system that we are talking about is the circulatory system. But is the circulatory system the only and the sole organism in our body? I'm sorry, the sole system in an organism like us? No. Then this circulatory system plus the digestive system and the respiratory system and many more can form an organism complex like us. So if I'm talking about, this would be applicable for a plant also. If I have to understand an example for a plant, same that way, only the names will change there. But the organization and the complexity is again the same. The moment you talk about cells, they will always group together to form tissues. Tissues will always group together to form organs. Organs group together, 4 or 5 organs come together to form a system, and then some 4 or 5 systems come together to complete the organism. But now tell me, now that I talk about these 2 types of cells, are forming a tissue. Now let us only talk about blood right now. These 2 types of cells are forming this tissue. Are these 2 types of cells same in structure? No, not necessarily that every time if we have to talk about tissues, the cells should be definitely having the same structure. They may not, but still they may form a tissue. So that is one concept that you understand, and few of them will form organ, some few organ system, etc., etc.
Can you please?
Feeling cold?
Yes.
You'll have to go and get. Acha, it's here. But you'll not feel hot, no? Now, when we are talking about this, so now from this concept of cells, let us learn something else. Let us learn something else. So now I already gave you certain examples. What is the hierarchy of the complexity? So we are talking about that cells and how can we relate the word cell with different type of organisms. Now say suppose I talk about, can you tell me, now some of you are already acquainted with these terms. Let's see if you're able to understand. When I talk about these few words, are you acquainted with all these?
Yes.
And then, no, I'm not going to write only the same time. And say suppose I write this say suppose I'm writing this. Now I give you 6 words here. What are those 6 words? Amoeba, euglena, paramecium, the egg of okay, and the frog eggs and the ostrich eggs and the neuron. 6 words you have. Can you group them into categories? You think? Can you group these 6 words? Can you?
All cells.
They're all cells.
They're all cells. Fine. And
They're unicellular.
unicellular and which one is multicellular?
They're all unicellular.
They're all unicellular.
Huh.
All of them are made of cells.
Single cell. And something else? My question is still there. Can you categorize them? ये 6 words को क्या तुम 2 category में divide कर सकते हो? एक
Microorganisms.
Which one? Which one is
Amoeba, euglena, paramecium, and neuron. They would be microorganisms.
neuron is not a
Neuron
microorganism.
is a cell. Sorry.
Neuron actually we can see. I mean, see suppose when we happen to dissect an animal. When we happen to dissect an animal, we don't get to see the detailed cell part, but then the white thread-like structure we can see. We can see the neurons. तो वो feature तो ruled out है. Microorganism नहीं चलेगा. Something else? Think. I'll give you one more minute to think.
Size of cells.
हाँ, size of cells ठीक है. Something else? कुछ नहीं आ रहा है. Amoeba, euglena, paramecium. मैंने एक के साथ लिखा है. And then these 3 I'm writing together.
Frog egg, ostrich egg, and neuron are part of a larger organism.
Very good. Now that I talk about ये जो 3 cell है, these are single cells and
Independent
they are the
organism.
organism also. Are you understanding now what I mean to say? ये जो 3 organism, these are single cells. At the same time, they are a complete organism. But is this a complete organism? Is this a complete organism? वैसे तो this is quite big in shape, no, quite big in structure. But is this a complete organism? No, it is going to give rise to something complex later. What about this? This is also quite long a cell, but will it be able to
part
serve
of an organism?
part of a complex organism? It is not a complete organism or a complete entity at all, no? So if that is so, then we are going to understand the next concept based on this. And what is the next concept that we are going to understand? That there are certain single cells which are a complete organism, and there are certain single cells which have to club together with some other components, some other cells to give rise to a complex organism. So our focus right now is on this. And what are these group of organisms now known as? This group of organisms are now known as unicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms. Then give me some examples of multicellular organisms.
Fishes,
Okay. And
humans,
human, of course, should not forget about ourselves. And
plants,
plants, birds, plants. Fine. So we are now talking about these 3 in one group and now these 3 in another group. So this particular group of organisms, what are some of the features we know? I'll ask you to write. What are some of the, no, wait, understand. Now when we are talking about this first group, unicellular organism, what I'm saying, it is only one cell. But is this amoeba, does this amoeba need to feed on?
Yes.
Of course. Does it need to respire, exchange of gases?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Does it need to excrete, give away waste substances?
Yes.
Yes. And it may or may not show movement, when I talk about unicellular organisms. Like this can move, and this also can partially move, this also can partially move. But not all unicellular organisms can. Hydras can move, they can dance. And now that when we are talking about this, there are some unicellular organisms which cannot move, but now that coincidentally I've written 3 examples, all can move. So here what I'm saying is that not to pity on the single cell, they can do all the functions necessary for survival. Feeding also, respiration also, transport of the food inside the cell also so that the entire part of the cell grows. properly. And then excretion also giving away the waste. And reproduction also, all the common functions that they can perform. But what about this fishes?
They need multiple cells.
They have organisms we were talking about. No, organism has got variety of systems. So this has got variety of systems. The digestive system is meant for
The eating of food and digestion.
taking in food and breaking it down, simpler form, etc. Human also has got the digestive system for dealing with the food and the digestion rate. The respiratory system for the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, and then the transportation system is also there. We've got the blood which takes nutrients from one part of the body to the other. We have got the nervous system for all the various different type of sensations, etc., etc. So many different type of systems in this case, no? So if I'm talking about one is this and the other is this one, we talk about the multicellular organism. So one is the unicellular organism, one is a multicellular organism. So here we are saying these are organisms which consist of only one single cells. Organisms consisting of many cells, two or more cells. Now remember again, all multicellular organisms. Now if I write examples of, say, suppose the Hydra, I write examples of this, I write examples of this. Now these type of organisms are also multicellular, but they don't contain millions of cells like us. They are simpler. Some of them may just have 20-30 cells, some may be having just 100 cells.
Isn't Hydra?
Yeah, Hydras are unicellular.
Who told you that?
We learned about it in
I am
7th
telling
and
you
8th.
this. No, not possible. You built up something wrong there. Hydra is multicellular. Hydra is multicellular. Hydra belongs to the third level of organism, and this unicellular group of organisms are the first level of organisms, simplest, single cells. These are multicellular. These and these all are multicellular. That's why I wrote here. These are also multicellular. These are also multicellular. But these group of organisms have just few cells. Rather, they are also known as few-celled organisms. If I talk a little bit in detail, I should say, ye ho gaya unicellular. These are few
They are
cells.
microorganisms.
Which ones?
Hydra
Hydra.
and tapeworm.
Hydra and tapeworm, no.
Tapeworm is a disease.
Oh my God.
It's in the
Which book you have studied biology?
Hydra is a microorganism.
Yeah, Hydra is a
Hydra is a
microorganism.
Hydra is microscopic. It is microscopic, but we don't generally categorize it as a microorganism. Microorganism means, yes, you cannot see it with your naked eyes, but it is not pathogenic.
Okay.
It does not give you any disease.
Yes.
It does not give you any disease.
But microorganism doesn't have to be pathogenic, right?
That's what I'm saying. So when I talk about this tapeworm, this is again,
It's a parasite.
it is pathogenic parasite. But again, these tapeworms, some species are not microscopic, microorganisms. They are not microorganisms, all of them. You can see them with your naked eyes.
So what exactly is microorganism?
Microorganisms are basically very small organisms that you cannot see with your naked eyes. And the moment you talk about microorganisms, not necessarily they should all be pathogenic. Not necessarily they should all be pathogenic. So here, these are the three categories, that's why I write. Absolutely unicellular, few cell, and truly multicellular. So here also there are so many, in that chapter diversity you will learn that there are so many type of organisms this side where they are simple, much simpler than us. They are much simpler, and they may not have all the systems that we have, but still they are finding out some of the other method for nutrition, respiration, etc., etc. No? Let us go back to this concept to understand. Now, it is unicellular organism and this multicellular. We try to find out the differences between this. Say, suppose now I talk about this unicellular amoeba, paramecium, euglena, chlamydomonas, etc., etc. Do they have any option? Can they depend on anything else for respiration or excretion? Or the single cell has to carry out all the functions. But what about this? What about this?
They have different functions.
They have so many complex functions, but they have got people to do. They have got systems and cells to do those functions. No? Like your own homes, are you in charge of everything of the house? No. Why not?
Because there are different people who are
Different people, father has got so many other work to do, the mother has so many different other roles to do. If you have got elder brother, so your role is as it is negligible in the house. So, like that. So, if you're the elder brother or the sister, then you have got a little bit of responsibility for the younger siblings. So, that way, so when we are talking about this complex organism, so many different group of cells and tissues and different job given. What is this particular point? You are going to write it down. This is what we talk about as division of labor. Wait, don't be in a hurry to write. Division of labor. What is the meaning of labor? The work getting distributed. So if I talk about here, is there any option for division of labor for this poor amoeba and no, that single cell has to do everything. What about this side? Yes, division of labor is there. Now let us write down the differences. Two major differences we are going to write. The first difference, you're going to make a table, no? Make a table, write unicellular, multicellular, and with examples. So many examples we have discussed. Unicellular, multicellular. Writing should be neat. You have to. No, I'm not telling you specifically. In general, I'm saying all of you should now make it a point that you have to write neat and proper in the notebooks. Unicellular, multicellular. Let us write down the first point for unicellular organisms. For unicellular, we write these organisms are made up of. These organisms are made up of single cells. These organisms are made up of single cells. These organisms are made up of a single cell. Single cell, I'm sorry, you can write a single cell, don't write cells. Made up of a single cell. Full stop. Other side. Multicellular. These organisms are made up of. These organisms are made up of few to many cells. These organisms are made up of few to many cells. These organisms are made up of few to many cells. Next point, the second difference. Under unicellular, the second difference, all physiological processes, for example, all physiological processes, for example, nutrition, respiration, etc., are carried out by the same cell. Other side, multicellular, different tissues and organs carry out different physiological functions. Physiological word, you check properly, the spelling. Different tissues and organs carry out different physiological functions. Hence, they show division of labor. Examples likho, two examples in each category now you write. Whether examples are asked or not, you should write always. You may get in the paper, write two differences between unicellular and multicellular organisms. In the question, it is not mentioned that you have to write examples. then should you write? Yes, you should write. But it is asked in the paper that write two differences between unicellular, multicellular. You are writing the first difference as you have written down in your notebook, write down, and the second difference you don't remember. So what you do is you are writing in the second point of difference you are writing algae, or you are writing amoeba, chlamydomonas, on the other side you are writing plants and human. Do you expect to get 2 marks there? Yes or no? No. Examples are never a point of difference, remember. So now if it is a question asking you to write two differences, you have to write two specific substantial difference. And then whether asked or not, examples you are supposed to write. But if the question already asks you that way, write two differences and mention one example for each, then understand that there is separate marks for the examples also. So whether asked or not, you are always supposed to write examples. Okay? Would you write two examples of unicellular?
Yes, ma'am.
Two examples of multicellular? All of you finished with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything to clarify?
Yes, I have a doubt.
Bolo.
Do fused organisms like Hydra? Do fused
Fused.
organisms like Hydra really have different organs and?
They have organs, but which are not very developed. Like if you talk about their organ for or the structures, these are well-developed tissues basically, not well complex organs, we cannot say. These are well-developed tissues. They have got some unorganized organs for excretion, but not a well-developed system with the kidneys and all like that, obviously not. And then when we are talking about for nutrition and feeding also, they have got just a few disorganized tissues. Do they have anything known as a body fluid, blood, etc.? Nothing. They don't have anything. Do they have anything known as nerves and etc., etc.? They have nothing. So this complexity has gradually happened, right from the single cell, and then another bit complex, and then bit complex, and then bit. So it has happened that way. And the organisms are just been categorized this way also, the simplest and the complex. The simplest and the complex. So when we are talking about the complex organisms, is it necessary that the most complex organism should be the largest and the biggest in size? Can you give me an example to say or justify your answer? You are saying no. Can you give me an example to justify that no? My question was that should now in that case amoeba is so poor, so small. Yes, it is simple. But then in that case, should we say that the most complex organism should be the largest of all? Since it is the complex of all, should it be the largest of all and the widest of all, and etc.?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. एक example देखिए बताओ.
Humans are more complex, let's say, from a larger animal, as in blue whale or elephants.
Correct.
Humans are more.
So when we are talking about human, we are actually considered to be the most complex group of organisms. But in front of the elephant and in front of the blue whale, they can gulp us down. So when we are talking about complexity, has got nothing with size. The next class we are going to learn. This is today we have talked about that. How can cells relate to organisms? Now the next class we are going to talk about how can the cells be complex. What is a complex cell? What is a simple cell? Okay, we'll continue with the next class. Next class, see that you all bring your notebooks, softboards, and pencils also. Huh? In the biology class, see that you all have a pouch where pencil, eraser, all the things should be there.
Second side of